most common questions I get as a counselor from both parents and from students is kind of which courses should I take? What should I do? And I think that that's always a good question, but sometimes it's based upon the mistaken belief that there's a clear, definite path. If I take these courses, I will definitely get into a highly selective university in the United States. In reality, I think whenever a student asks me which courses should I take, my response to them is usually which courses do you want to take? I think that what colleges look for when they look at that transcript are kids that have pursued their intellectual interests. My first rule of thumb is this. You want to challenge yourself within the context of your high school, whether that be taking AP courses or IB courses or O-levels, A-levels. You want to challenge yourself, but you don't want to drown. It doesn't do anybody any good to have a highly challenging curriculum, but very low grades. You want to have a degree of challenge, yes, but you also want to balance it out with grades that are strong. When a reader gets your application, the first thing they generally do is they're going to look at that transcript and look at those grades. And if the grades are bad or very low, even if the rigor is there, quite frankly, you're behind the 8 ball a little bit, you're in trouble. So I say find balance, challenge yourself in some areas, but you don't always have to kind of take the ultimate, most difficult courses possible. Next, remember that numbers are only one part of the evaluation process. So for example, let's say I'm a reader at Brown University. That's an open curriculum Ivy League school. Yeah, they want good numbers, but because they're an open curriculum school, they're going to value kids that take chances, that intellectually explore. And I think that's great advice. Numbers are only one part of the process. There's all sorts of other factors that are going to go into the evaluation process. Certainly, I think that a lot of schools will puddle. So let's say there's a 4.0 high GPA, meaning that's straight A's. You know, you'll kind of puddle it, meaning here's a top group of kids that are in that kind of 3.7 to 4.0. Here's the next group that's in that 3.3 to 3.6. You don't sit there and say, I definitely admit this student because they're a 4.59 over this student that's a 4.49. It doesn't really work that way. They're generally kind of grouped together. So think of the puddle concept and don't get too caught up in sort of small numeric differences. Finally, as you're making your course selections, it's okay to be a specialist. If you're a student that loves biology, if you're a student that loves computer science, yes, dive deeply into those classes that you're passionate about. It doesn't mean you have to dive deeply into everything. Some schools, particularly if there's a tech attached to it, Cal Tech, for example, they like those kids that have dived deeply and dove deeply into a topic, so keep that in mind. And then finally, I think when it comes to your course selection, leave room for fun. I feel like in the last 10 to 20 years as a counselor, I've absolutely had students get admitted to Stanford, Harvard, Brown, in part because they have good numbers, but in part because when the reader looked at their transcript, they saw a student that challenged themselves and had a little fun. They enrolled in a class on Spanish, they took a class on filmmaking, they took a class on photography. They intellectually explored, and they didn't take it all quite so seriously. So when it comes time to your course selection, don't rule out the idea of I'm just taking a class because it looks like it's going to be a fun, interesting intellectual experience. Those are my tips.